Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Educators, Performers, Creators. This is a series of shows introducing different educators, performers, creators to you. Who are they? What do they do? In this occasion, we're going to have a series of 3 shows. Today, January 24th at 3 p.m. Right now, we are live, if you're watching us live. And the next 2 Sundays, the 31st of January at 3 p.m. Central Time, and February 7th at 3 p.m. Central Time. So tune in, but also you can send your questions either at q@epcshow.com. You can send an email with your questions to this artist, or you can tweet. Even during our show, you can tweet using the hashtag FON16. Now, what is FON16? It's Festival of Nations 2016. So this year, again, we're going to have this wonderful celebration of the Festival of Nations in St. Paul, Minnesota. If you haven't learned about it, we'll let you know a little more later on. But today, I have invited as a guest, one of the artists that will participate at the Festival of Nations. Now, if you are an artist who had participated in the Festival of Nations in Minnesota before, or will participate and want to be part of this show, the 2 coming Sundays, please contact me at the letter Q, at epcshow.com. And you can also visit epcshow.com to invite your friends to see this show. Today, I have as a guest, Yelena Kalevik. Hello, Yelena.
Hello, Paulina.
How are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm happy to be at that show and tell people about what we're doing and what the Festival of Nations means to Russian community here in Minneapolis.
Perfect. Could you please start, let's start with you. Let us know how you became interested in traditional Russian culture and a little bit of what you do.
Well, to begin with, I was born in Russia, in St. Petersburg, and I came to the United States in 1990. So it's been nearly 26 years, and I moved to Minnesota in 1998 and immediately got hooked up with the Festival of Nations. I think it is one of the most wonderful events I have seen in the United States, and I've traveled so far to 40 states, so I've seen a lot. But first I started as a volunteer, and in 2005 I became a general chair for the Russian group. And that's when the trouble started, when the Ukrainian group came to me and complained that Russian dancers were performing Ukrainian dances, which is not appropriate. The Festival of Nations doesn't represent countries, it represents nations. And we had, well, for people who are not familiar with the system, there is a general chair and there is a chair for each area that at the festival, like the cafes, the entertainment, the exhibit. So I had a disagreement with the performance chair because he insisted that Hopak, Ukrainian dance, was okay because there are a lot of Ukrainians in Russia. Well, we disagreed. And though they are both Slavic cultures and very similar, but still there are a lot of differences. So in the end, I had no recourse but to start my own dance group. And that's how the whole Russian Cultural Center started. So first there was a small group of dancers, and for the first time we performed the Festival of Nations 2006. But then we found that it's a little bit more than dancing, and the more you study the Russian folk culture, the broader vistas open. And I realized that though I was born in Russia and speak Russian, read Russian, I don't really know the culture of my ancestors. And we started doing research, and we started producing, instead of the generic Russian costumes, We started doing replicas of historic costumes. Well, I am wearing a kokoshnik, a Russian traditional headdress, which is not just from any area. It's a specific area in the north of Russia. It's called the city of Kargopol, and it's called a little duckling. They're different names for kokoshniks in different areas. And from the costume, you could tell so much in those days before the Russian Revolution. You could tell about social status. For example, in some areas, the number of ribbons on an apron would tell you how many kids the woman has.
Mm-hmm.
Or the
Wow.
headdress she was wearing will tell you whether she is married or betrothed or widowed, just by looking at her.
Very good, very good. So, Yelena, we'll talk a little more about the costumes in a minute. That's very interesting how much you can tell just from what they're wearing. Let me take you back a little bit to the beginning of this group. It's called Russian Soul, right?
Well, we have like an umbrella organization, a non-profit with a federal status. We have 501c3. Which is called Russian Cultural Center, Russian Soul. But our most visible part is the folk ensemble Belozerya, which means the country of white lakes. And actually, if I can mention why it is called so. Well, Minnesota is the country of 10,000 lakes, as we know. And Belovodye, the country of white water, is a fabled promised land in Russian folklore, sort of a Shambhala, where people were searching for centuries. Nobody found, or those who found never came back. So we thought that many of us, Russian immigrants, found our promised land here in Minnesota, so we kind of brought two meanings together. Here comes the country of white lakes, Belozerya. That's the name of our whole group.
Great. So tell me a little more about that group. So I've been looking at some of the pictures you sent me. You performed in 2006 for the first time, and I see a picture of 2013 performing. Tell me a little more of some of the activities of this group. So, for example, here we have the recreation of a bridal folk ritual. Can you tell me more about it?
Sure. We performed at every Festival of Nations since 2006. I just couldn't put every picture we have. And we take care of exhibition, performance. We had kid performances as well, and demonstration booth. But aside of just the Festival of Nations, we have other activities, and we got a couple of grants from Minnesota Regional Art Council, and actually the bridal ritual that we performed was made possible by the grant. And we did a program which was called Festivals and Traditions, and presented three major events in the life of a Russian peasant, and that would be Svyatki, which is a Christmas time, 2 weeks of Christmas celebrations, Maslenitsa, which is a Russian Mardi Gras, a week before the beginning of the Great Lent, and the wedding ritual, or rather rituals before the actual wedding. So the picture that you might show is the ritual of changing the future bride's hairdo. And what's interesting, that after that ritual, the social status of the girl would be changed forever. Even if the bridegroom would have cold feet and disappear just before the wedding, her status would have been changed.
Just by that ritual.
Just by changing her two braids into her one braid into two braids and covering the hair. So her hair shouldn't be seen by anybody but her husband. And at all times, a Russian peasant woman will be wearing a small cap and the elaborate headdress I have now would go on only on special occasions, but still over this little cap.
Right, and now many people, of course, associate Mardi Gras with the south of United States. Who would know that Russians also celebrate Mardi Gras? Tell me a little more about this celebration, and also I see here you participate or involve children, and tell me a little more about how you celebrate Mardi Gras.
Well, actually, it is not called Mardi Gras. It is called Maslenitsa, literally translated as Butterfest. And it is a very ancient celebration, and it still is celebrated all over Russia and in many Slavic countries. I think that similar celebrations go on in Bulgaria. They might be called differently, there might some differences, but still celebrating spring, celebrating the coming of the sun is a very important part of the peasant year. So it all started in, I don't know when, but definitely before Christianity came to Russia in the 10th century. The Slavs were celebrating spring, then the god son Yarila, with making and eating pancakes, which are called blini. And, well, the sun is red, it is round and hot, so are the blinis. And a week, people were making blinis. Every day had a special activity, but and had a special meaning. When Christianity came, this festival was kind of tied with the Lent. Russian Orthodox have a really long Lent, 7 weeks, and very strict. No dairy products, no butter. Some days you're not even allowed to eat hot food. And so the week before the Great Lent was the week of eating well and having fun, because the next 7 weeks will be prayer, Lent, and you have to get ready for that. So it usually started with making the effigy of a Maslenitsa, and one of the pictures you see the doll, a woman, which actually symbolizes winter. And on the last day of Maslenitsa, which is a Sunday before the beginning of the Lent, this effigy is burnt, and everything, all leftovers, like dough or uneaten blinis, will be thrown in the bonfire. Yes, you know, if you know something about world religions, you could see parallels with.
Definitely. I do remember growing up. I grew up in Argentina, and around Carnival season in some parts of Latin America, especially in Argentina, we do have some celebrations where you make a big puppet and you burn it, or there are some fireworks involved, but also lots of water. Now, tell me a little more about, is it pronounced Yolka?
Yolka. Yeah, it's that's again a mixture of a traditional and pagan beliefs and Soviet era things, like a lot of festivals in Russian folklore, a mixture of pagan and Christian traditions. So the festival of Sviatki, or Holy Weeks, that's 2 weeks between Christmas and Epiphany, is very old, and to celebrate it, people would don masks and costumes, walk from house to house asking for some gifts, well, food, candies, something like that. Does it remind you of Halloween?
It does.
Yeah. And there was also a lot of special songs and dances during that time. In the times of Peter the Great, that's 18th century, Tsar Peter wanted to turn Russia to Europe, and he brought a lot of European customs, and he ordained that Christmas celebration should include a Christmas tree, like it was done in Germany. And actually, traditional Russian Yolka decorations, Christmas tree decorations, are very similar to the ones you can see at the museum, Minneapolis Institute of Arts, when they have their Yolka presentations. The German Yolka is exactly as I remember my Yolkas in my childhood. When the Bolsheviks came to power, they decreed to change the calendar. And so now, when all the world is celebrating Christmas on the 25th, the Russians celebrate it on the 7th of January. And but still celebrate it. So, and for many years, Christmas trees were forbidden, and they were seen as a religious symbol, and in the country of atheists that was no, but people still celebrated secretly, maybe not having a tree, but maybe having just a brunch or something. And now this is a legitimate holiday, but in the 30s, Stalin brought made some, concessions to the public spirit, and Yolkas began to be celebrated again, but it was not called Svyatki, it was called Yolka, or Christmas tree, and instead of Santa Claus, we have Ded Moroz, or Father Frost. There is a picture of it. And his granddaughter, Snegurочка, Snow Maiden. And all through the Soviet years, there would be grand events for kids. There would be like 3 weeks of celebrations. Yolkas would be presented in circuses, in theaters, everywhere, and we always got gifts, even it was a couple of tangerines and a candy, and of course the gifts was given by Father Frost. So we're trying to bring this back, and I think maybe parents of the children enjoy these celebrations as much as the kids, because that brings memories of their childhood. Because we have Father Frost, and we have Snegurочка, and we have the gifts, and all kinds of things.
Great. So I noticed the group does also other activities, and I like to go through a few of those. But would you share with us, for those who live in the area, the Twin Cities or near Minnesota, and that sometimes might be interested in participating or learning more, where do you usually hold these activities, or where can they get more information?
Okay, we do have a website. It's called www.rushcultureman.com, but if you Google Russian Soul Minnesota, you will find it, which has a calendar of everything that is happening with the addresses. We also place information on Facebook. We have a page for the Russian Cultural Center. And actually right now, if anybody is interested in learning Russian dancing, we are starting to prepare for the Festival of Nations 2016, and we're welcoming dancers who would learn 3 or more, maybe 5 Russian dances, and perform with us at the Festival of Nations. And nationality, age, and skills do not matter. We'll teach anybody who wants to learn and is able to dance.
Perfect. So tell me a little more about some of these activities. I see here you're doing, or you have done, a cooking class.
Well, we don't do it every month, but 2 or 3 times a year, yes, we offer a Russian cuisine class. Like, for example, for Christmas, we did a traditional northern cookies called kazuli from Arkhangelsk area, and we invited parents with children. It's always fun to do something with the kids. What we do, we prepare the things, and then we have the ingredients, and then mix them together, and then they can eat or take the food home. We had Lenten cuisine, we had Maslenitsa cuisine, making blinis, for example. We also do different workshops on Russian traditional skills, like finger weaving, doll making. Actually, it's fascinating thing because Russian ritual dolls are very different from other ritual dolls from other cultures, because they were never meant to bring evil. They only serve as protectors or placeholders, but never like voodoo dolls. You could never cause harm with the dolls. What else? Well, sometimes we get requests and do a workshop on a specific craft, for example, in embroidery. We offer lectures. Actually, in February, I will be presenting a lecture on Russian literature in Anoka County Library. We perform wherever we are invited, at local festivals. We performed at Landmark Center, at the Metrodome years ago, at the Russian Museum. Well, wherever we are invited.
Perfect. Yes. So I hope that people can come to your website to check that on your calendar. Now, you mentioned at the beginning a little bit about the headdresses and some information that is related to the way people dress traditionally. And I see you have many pictures about that, so I'll invite you to tell us a little more about costumes and traditional dresses.
Well, as I said, you could tell a lot. You could tell exactly, pinpoint the area the person came from. It's not so for the guys. You see, there was a picture of, actually, these are my two grandkids. They're a little bit more grown up now. But if you look at their shirts, they're called kasavarodka, a side collar shirt. And these were common for all men all over Russia. The changes were in the trim or in the color and the fabric, but still you could tell. Well, for example, in northern Russia, a guy wearing a white kasavarodka with red embroidery and a straw hat with a wreath around it was looking for a bride. You could tell.
Oh, so there was a message.
Yes, there was
a special code in the clothing with the colors.
Yes, yes, and small details. Or, for example, there were all kinds of non-verbal messages, because Russian peasants were not very good with words. You know, there are few words in Russian that can express physical love, for example, or describe.
So I see that you work a lot on replicas of historic costumes, like I'm showing right now. Could you please pronounce those names for me?
Okay, Vologda, the lady in green, this is a costume of a newly married lady, and we can tell because her hair is totally covered. She has a kokoshnik, which is called zbornik, and the quality of the fabric tells me that she comes from an affluent family which can afford imported fabrics. What's interesting that in southern Russia you would see more colorful costumes, but not using rich fabrics. They couldn't afford the store fabric. They would use homespun and just little pieces of store-bought fabric to put as a trim. And the lady in the blue, she is wearing a costume from Olonetz. That's a city in the Russian north. And if you look at her unusual headdress, it kind of reminds you about Dutch fashions of the 17th century. The reason why is that city is close to the White Sea, and they had direct access to Europe, and some European fashions kind of trickled down to peasants. And the lace on her head would be made of real seed pearls. We had to use beads, but in the past it would be real seed pearls and would be quite expensive.
And I see that you have also not only worked on different replicas, but then, that you use for your dances, but you also do other things. I see here you're using dolls, so you do costumes for dolls. And
not really. We do costumes. This doll was made for the festival, for the presentation at the Festival of Nations.
Okay.
Making a costume, a full costume of that kind would be too expensive. Actually, this doll is quite pricey. It's all handwork, hand embroidery, and so we just made a replica of a costume for the doll.
Right, and you also, so you show your costumes quite a lot, which is nice. I see you have exhibited at the Hennepin County Gallery.
Twice we have exhibited in the Hennepin. We also always have an exhibition during the Honor Week at Northeast Minneapolis. We have a small gallery and we exhibit whatever is current, the works of our members.
And what about the fashion show? Tell me about this Russian fashion show. Sounds like a neat idea. Tell me a little more about it.
That was a few years ago when we worked on bringing costumes from different areas of Russia. And here you see some southern costumes, northern costumes. For example, the girl on the right, she's wearing a Moscow kokoshnikov and Moscow sarafan of an unmarried girl. The girl next to her with a basket, she's wearing the Smolensk costume. The guy behind is from Pskov, and I'm wearing Kargopol, and the lady next to me is wearing Smolensk costume, Ryazan costume, which is very colorful, but you see it's like made of small pieces of fabric. And so each of them has a special. So we did like show different parts, and from then on we started making like more targeted shows. Like we had Northern Beauty, and that was 8 areas from Russia, north and west, and we would present costumes, male and female, replicas of course, and a song and dance from the same area and the same period.
Great. So just to be rounding up our interview and your experience today, I would love if you can tell me a little more about your experience at the Festival of Nations. What are some of your best memories there?
Well, as I said, I've been going to the Festival of Nations for 18 years, and I can't say that I have seen everything. Every year there is something new, something different. And actually there are quite a few changes coming, and this interview, for example, is one of the changes. So I'm looking forward to working with Justin Medal, the new director of the Festival of Nations. He has been with us for 2 years now. And, it's really hard to say what's most impressive, because everything is. The costumes, the dances, where else would I see and hear didgeridoo from Australia? Where else would I check the difference between Nepalese dumplings, Tibetan dumplings, Chinese dumplings? You can't. Or see the difference between baklava from Turkey and Armenia. Only there. Only there.
Perfect. So for those of you who are not familiar with Festival of Nations, this year will happen on from May 6th to May 8th, 2016 at the St. Paul River Center, and you can look for more information at festivalofnations.com. We invite everyone not only to check out the Festival of Nations, but if you have any questions for upcoming artists or for Yelena, leave a comment below this video. You can also send an email to q@epcshow.com. That's the letter Q @epcshow.com. Or on Twitter, send a tweet with the hashtag FON16. Festival of Nations 16. I want to share one more time the website for Russian Soul, the Russian Cultural Center, rusculturemn.com. And I would like to thank Yelena for being here with me today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity, Paulina, and everybody who has a question can contact me directly as well. Would be happy to answer. There is contact information on our website. And good luck with your show. I hope we'll have a lot more people talking about the festival.
Definitely. Thank you. So again, I like to extend the invitation to all artists who have been part of Festival of Nation or will be part of Festival of Nation this year, 2016, and for everyone to check out EPC show for upcoming educators, performers, creators show. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.